I want to focus mainly on two things in this video: Harris's concession speech, her campaign, and how I feel the Democrats should go forward. I've just watched her speech. It was about 12 minutes. She was in black, as Hillary Clinton was when she conceded in 2016. Um, I thought it was a strong speech. I thought it showed the sort of person Kamala Harris is. She said everything she could say. I mean, she expressed disappointment. She thanked her supporters. She thanked key people like Tim Walz and her husband, Doug Emhoff. And she acknowledged the disappointment that her supporters will feel. And a very important point was she said, well, there's several important points. She said, "We've conceded this election, but not the fight that inspired this campaign." I thought that was very important. But critically, she said that she acknowledged Trump had won and she will assist him with the peaceful transfer of power because the defeated candidate, that will be Harris, but also the incumbent president, which will be Biden, they'll have to assist Trump in the transition, so they'll send transition teams. I'm sure that Biden and Harris will go to his inauguration because it will be a further opportunity to underline how different they are from Donald Trump. I'm sure they'll go to his inauguration. Um, because the peaceful transition of power is so critical for American democracy. It's something that George Washington, I think one reason Washington's so highly rated by historians is because he could have been a monarch, he could have been a dictator, he could have ran for a third term, he could have done that, but he never did. So George Washington laid the foundations for the norms that were to follow. And it's true that Franklin Roosevelt um, extended that, controversially so, but Roosevelt was a very popular figure for the most part. And whilst he did get more term limits, he was democratically elected in 1940 and 1944. It's not like he just took absolute dictatorial powers and wasn't elected. He was actually elected. So Harris understands this. I've spoke about Grover Cleveland. He's the only other president who've had two non-consecutive terms as the 22nd and 24th president. And if my history serves me well, 1885 to 1889 and 1893 to 1897. Um, Cleveland, like Trump, was a New Yorker, but that's where the comparisons end. Cleveland was, from what I understand, a modest man and renowned for his honesty, hard work, and integrity. Um, and whilst initially he got a lot of criticism for industrial tensions on his watch, historians now rank him above average. Not one of the great presidents, and certainly not a memorable president, but that's how he's remembered. He also has the distinction of being the only president to have actually served as an executioner. He was a hangman, apparently, which is slightly dark detail, but um, there was also conspiracy theories online that Grover Cleveland was Jack the Ripper. But I tell you, that is absolute nonsense. Getting back to Harris's speech, though, I think it was dignified. I think she couldn't have done it any other way. Now, I know there'll be Trump supporters out there gloating about it, because they targeted the way she laughed, they targeted her appearance, all sorts of nonsense issues like that. I think that speech to me was leadership. She said what she had to say. Um, Now, how do the Democrats go forward? Firstly, they will, of course, have to look at why they lost. And they can't, Trump has got the popular vote, unfortunately. So they can't even say it was a fluke because he won the Electoral College and not the popular vote. He did win both. So they have to acknowledge that more Americans voted for Trump than voted for Harris. I think the economy, like I said in the previous video, that will be a major, major issue. Any incumbent presidency, and by presidency, I am tying Harris to Biden here because she was vice president. Let's say any administration who has economic problems, um, will will struggle. And I think that the whole thing about joy at the convention, maybe the Democrats should have been a little bit more humble in the convention. Maybe they should have been a bit more honest about the hardship people are facing. And yes, they have spoken about that. But I do remember feeling at the time, yes, there's all this joy and optimism, and that's all very well. But for Americans who are struggling, that might even be a little bit insulting. It might look like, well, the government's celebrating while we're struggling. So I'm not sure that that was the best approach. Nothing wrong with optimism, nothing wrong with being positive, but at times it was a little bit too much, I think. So that was a mistake at that convention. Um, I actually don't think that Harris, I don't think we could say that identity politics was an issue because I don't think that Harris overtly played on that. I really don't. She never said, you should elect me because I'm a woman or you should elect me because I'm black. In that sense, her campaign was not dissimilar to Obama's in '08. He explicitly didn't run as a black candidate. Um, but of course, 2008 is very different from 2024. Um, when I look at her campaign, though, I don't see any major gaffes from her. I really don't. There were a couple of missed opportunities. She should have maybe distanced herself more from Biden's economy. But I honestly don't know how, in the time that she had, like 3 months, I mean, look at the achievement that she got. She got a lot of Republicans coming over to her campaign. In fact, if anything, it's surprising. There could be an argument made that it's surprising she didn't have an even bigger loss. I mean, even with only 3 months of campaign, she still got 68 million votes. And yes, Trump has got a lot more, but clearly a lot of Americans invested trust in her. But going forward, I noted a very poignant thing from the Lincoln Project where they spoke about the importance of respecting the democratic result, but also vowed to keep fighting against what Trump represents. And I've seen other figures in the Harris supporters. Robert Reich, for example, is he's a senior Democrat politician. I think he served in the Carter administration, if I've got that right. No, maybe it was actually the Clinton administration, but regardless, he's a senior Democrat. Now runs a YouTube channel, and he pointed out that we'll keep up the fight. This is extremely important. They have to hold Trump to account. Accepting the Democratic result doesn't mean Trump doesn't need to be challenged. It doesn't mean that President Trump cannot be challenged when he crosses a line. He absolutely can. And that's the point of democracy, to have debates, to have differences of opinion. Trump has been elected to the presidency. He has not been elected to be an absolute monarch or dictator. I still think he's a wannabe dictator. I still think he will do what he can to get as much power as he can. But that has to be forcefully resisted. Um, but I do think that the Democrats also need to show humility. Simply talking about how awful Trump is won't cut it. They do have to look at why people vote for Trump. And it's not enough to say, oh, they're all extremists. 73 million Americans are not extremists. There are definitely extremists among Trump supporters, no question about it. How else do you describe people who, pack up firearms because the deep state is, in their mind, conspiring against them? How else do you describe people who violently attack the Capitol because they couldn't accept the results of a democratic election? Something which markedly stands out Trump from anyone else. The fact that he, for 4 years, could not accept that he lost. In that sense, Harris is just doing the conventional thing of conceding graciously. I've also said that there's graciousness in defeat, there's also graciousness in victory. Trump claims he's all about unity. Let him prove it. Let him reach out to Harris and the Democrats. Is he going to do that? I doubt it. Um, but I do think, perhaps a lot of Trump voters resented kind of being tied into white supremacists and extremists. But I would respectfully say to them, you may not be that way. You may just be a regular person, a blue collar worker, or what have you, struggling, and you want someone who answers these problems. But you have to acknowledge there are extremists who also support your candidate. You have to acknowledge Laura Loomer, a far right conspiracy theorist, was flying around with Trump on a plane. And as for liberal elites, Elon Musk. literally the richest man in the world was prancing alongside Trump on stage. So this idea that this was a rebuke to the liberal elite, I find questionable. Trump himself is extremely wealthy. He is promoting tax breaks for billionaires. How is that, listening to the common man? It just, there's an obvious contradiction there. Um, what will happen in 4 years? I actually honestly would like to see Harris run again. This might sound strange given that she's lost. Usually, I would say a defeated candidate shouldn't run again, but I do think she has a lot to offer. And I think had she had more time, maybe I should say that cautiously because I am very aware that the economy was a major reason she lost, and people aren't going to change their opinion in 4 years. But maybe that time out of office, i.e., out of the administration, Harris will be able to build up more of, if she stays in frontline politics, if she's vocal, people might say, okay, this is somewhat, they'll start to know her better because one of the complaints was, we don't know who she is, we don't know what she stands for. Well, if she keeps repeating her message in the next 4 years, maybe there will be strong ground for her to stand again. She'll be 64, which will be significantly younger than Biden or Trump still. It's a little bit on the older end of things, but these days, 64 is not that old. Um, so, in a way, I would like to see her run again because I really think she deserved to win this year. I just think looking at both those candidates, in terms of personal integrity, honesty, everything, every value bit pretty much, Harris draws rings around Trump. And she's not perfect, but I would like to. The only thing is, in 4 years, if Trump isn't the Republican nominee, and let's say it's a more normal Republican, then it'll be much harder for Harris to kind of pitch it as, you know, saving democracy. If it's a more conventional Republican, let's say Vance is on the ticket in 4 years, we've no idea what will happen. I'm not sure if the 22nd Amendment allows for a president who has won an election in a non-consecutive election then get re-election. I don't know if it allows for that, or rather if it is 8 years altogether. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to look that up. Hopefully, the law restricts Trump from getting another 4 years. I mean, he'll be 82 in 4 years, so it's clearly, and given what we've seen so far, he is far from the astute, cognitive athlete that he claims to be. But anything could happen. He could have a stroke. Don't know. Um, so the next 4 years is a massive question mark. We know what Trump's threatened. We know what sort of character he is. We've also seen that he can be erratic. So I just don't know. But I will say this: accepting that he won is not the same as having to say as saying he can be challenged. And this is the point I always made in Britain. Brexiteers were always talking about, oh, respect the result, respect the result. Yes, but that never ever meant that Remain voters had to be happy with it. It never meant the Remain voters couldn't question the consequences of Brexit. In a similar way, Harris voters, Harris supporters have every right to question Trump. They have every right to criticise Trump peacefully. Yes, they should accept the result, and yes, they should show some humility as to why the Democrats lost. I would say this: the woke left needs to jolly well wake up because if you're telling a poor white person that they should, they're the product of white privilege, that is going to absolutely fall flat. And I will say this for Trump: his campaign has effectively managed to weaponize the fight against the far left. It has done that. I don't think Harris is far left, but I think there are some Democrats who are. Um, Trump has managed to utilize that. He has warned people about woke extremism, and it's been effective. So I think the Democrats should distance themselves from the far left. Um, I would like to see them go much more to the center. Something akin to the Clinton years, for example. I don't think Harris is far left, but I would say she was more left, for example, than Bill Clinton. Maybe she needs to be. I mean, although she's got conservatives into her campaign, She needs to keep pushing at the centre ground and, frankly, also look at the things that concern Trump voters. She did speak about immigration, but not enough. Not enough. The economy and immigration were the two major issues in this election, not democracy and abortion. And the Harris campaign probably made those the main issues. So that was a mistake. But I think that she showed leadership in that concession speech. I think she said everything she could say, and she can hold her head high. I like Kamala Harris. I'd even go so far as to say I admire her. Um, maybe not all of her politics, maybe not all of her positions, but I genuinely admire her courage and her toughness in standing up to Trump, and Trumpism. Okay, I'll leave it there. But the next 4 years, I'll also, well, just one last thing. No, I'll make it another video. I was going to talk about response to Trump and Trumpism.